What's up, Notre Dame fans? I'm blueandgold.com's Mike Singer, joined by our senior editor, Lou Somogyi, here to discuss Notre Dame Clemson matchup number 2 on the season. Lou, this is what everyone predicted coming into the season, that whatever happens on November 7th, may not matter a ton, because they're going to have a second rematch. Whoever loses in that first game will have a good shot at revenge the next month. But Lou, this has been such a wild week, not only for Notre Dame playing in its first conference championship game. You have Clark Lee news breaking on Monday that he will be taking the Vanderbilt head coaching position. And then, oh yeah, Brian Kelly is, as he said in his press conference on Wednesday, likely to sign his biggest class in his 10 years at Notre Dame as head coach. And just adding recruits left and right. Doesn't even seem like they have a ceiling for how many recruits they can take with how many that they've landed in this class, Lou. So just what's the feeling like this week with just so much going on? It's almost like, man, are they even, are they distracted at all going into this game?
No, I don't think distraction will be a problem, mainly because classes have been out since November 20th. So it's truly all about just preparation and football. Uh, at times, Mike, it has reminded me. I remember back when USC visited in 2011, Brian Kelly's second year. It was the biggest recruiting weekend in Notre Dame history. I mean, they had like about 8 or 9 5 stars coming in for that weekend. It was Notre Dame's first night game in 20 years. It was the game where they started with the piped in music, and the game where they had the gold helmets freshly painted and the way you see it now. And then it was like, oh, yeah, there's a football game too. And man, before you knew it, Notre Dame was down 14-0 and ended up losing because afterwards it was like, yeah, that's right. There was a football game because all the talk was about the recruiting and everything else. But I don't think that will be an issue this weekend. One thing I do want to say, that November 7th game did matter
Yeah.
because had Notre Dame lost that game, then it would have been the same storylines. They can't win the big ones. That game has propelled Notre Dame, I think, to a different level of psyche because it was like their validation and confirmation that yes, indeed, we can play with anybody.
Yeah, especially how they dominated on both sides of the line. Absolutely huge. Which brings us into our next point, Lou. Trevor Lawrence is back. Clemson has some starters back on defense that they did not have. So maybe, we're playing a what if game, but, if those defensive starters were playing in November 7th, what would the outcome have looked differently? Well, will have a pretty good indication on Saturday, as all these guys are going to be playing. So my question to you, Lou, is what makes the bigger impact for this game? Trevor Lawrence being back, or those defensive starters?
You know, after that first game, my thought was that uh, the absence of the defensive starters was more significant than Trevor Lawrence because I was just looking at it statistically and was saying, well, what more could Lawrence have done that DJ didn't? Because DJ passed for a record 439 yards against Notre Dame. But when you just look at it statistically, I think that's misguided. What Trevor Lawrence is able to do is perhaps open up the running game with the inside zones and especially the outside zone reads. He's much underrated as a running threat. You know, last year he ran for 563 yards, 5.5 yards a carry, 9 touchdowns, and I think when the bigger the game it becomes, the more they activate him in that type of role. And I think you saw that against Virginia Tech on December 5th, as they used that as a scrimmage to try to get a rhythm. Now, I'm not saying that Clemson goes from 34 yards rushing against Notre Dame to suddenly 200 or something like that. But I think how Clemson is looking at it is, can we get to triple digits? Can we get to about 130 yards at about 4.5 yards a clip, where you don't have to rely exclusively on just all that passing, where you can keep Notre Dame a little bit more off balance and be more productive in the red zone, because the Notre Dame red zone defense was really strong against Clemson, forced them into 4 field goals, and also just 4 of 15 on third downs. So 26%, whereas Notre Dame was 52%. So I think that'll be an interesting aspect. And then defensively, I think what we need to remember is Notre Dame scored on the first play of the game. And I believe there was 14:27 left. First play from scrimmage
Right.
after a penalty. Notre Dame did not score a touchdown on offense again until 20 seconds were remaining in regulation time. So you're looking at about 59 minutes where Notre Dame did not score, even though it looks on paper like, my gosh, they dominated the line of scrimmage. And when you see it as 208-34 in rushing yards, yeah, they did. But, some of that also can be a little bit misleading, as most statistics can be.
Sure, Lou. You could tell me if I'm crazy here, but I think back to the Patriots and just so much of dominance in the NFL in Belichick's MO of, we're going to take away your best player, make everyone else beat us. I feel like they took away, Notre Dame took away Travis Etienne and said, all right, we're going to make DJ Uiagalelei beat us. With Trevor Lawrence back, Lou, you can't really just take away Travis Etienne because, you know, uh, Trevor Lawrence can absolutely beat you with his legs too. So if they're running a zone read, you can't sell out on Etienne because Trevor Lawrence, he can hurt you in so many different ways. So I agree with you, Lou. I feel like we've kind of been for the past few weeks just saying, yeah, the defensive starters are more important, but man, Trevor Lawrence as well as DJ played, you can't underestimate Trevor Lawrence. That'd certainly be silly. Lou, does Notre Dame need to do anything different in this game, or do you think they should keep the same script? Like, I can't imagine Notre Dame's going to come out and just start throwing the rock around a ton when their identity all season has been run the football and then let Ian Book be creative and scramble around a good bit and just pick up some ad lib plays. So do you see, look, Notre Dame's 2020 offensive identity being what we see today, or do you think Notre Dame, maybe try to mix things up?
The theme all year consistently from Brian Kelly has been, we are who we are. Clemson is who they are as well. And to try to overthink and overanalyze at this point of the season, I think would be counterproductive. Do you do some extra tweaks? Do you just say, hey, we're fine as it is, we wouldn't be 10-0? No, you can't just stand pat that way either. They know Clemson will come out with some different looks, and they have to prepare for that as well. But you are who you are identity wise. They're not going to suddenly come out with the triple option or go into a 3-4 scheme, I think, defensively or anything crazy like that. But you try to make the right tweaks and adjustments to provide a counterpunch, because Clemson's going to be a different team as well with Trevor Lawrence in the lineup as well. I think they're going to maybe also try to exploit the middle of the field a little bit more with him in the lineup.
Before we get into score predictions, Lou, all right, so if Notre Dame wins this game, not only will they be a lock for the college football playoff, if Alabama happens to slip up against Florida, they'll be the number 1 seed. But of course, if they lose, still a very good chance to get into the playoff. But my question is, and I've posed this to you in one of our recent shows on our YouTube page, Lou, and so I want to see if your opinion on this has changed. Is there a amount of points that, all right, if Notre Dame loses by more than this margin, and it's going to be hard for the committee to put them in there. I mean, look, my score prediction is close. So, you would have Notre Dame in there. But if it's 20, is it 30? With how the committee has been handling things, and, Florida dropping one spot after losing LSU, does it need to be 60 points, for Notre Dame to drop out of the top four? What are your thoughts, Lou?
Yeah, I sure hope it's not going to be like that 2014 Big Ten championship game where Ohio State beat Wisconsin 59 to nothing, which kind of made them that fourth team going into the playoff, even though TCU won by a similar score or something like that same day and got knocked out. Um, yeah, I think that everyone knows who the top four teams are, and unless Notre Dame lays a complete egg like that, where it's 49-7 or 49-10,
Right.
uh, that it would knock them out. I think it would still be looked at as Notre Dame and Clemson have the two best wins of the season, and it's sort of like, well, let's get the rubber match and see what it really looks like. It would drop them to the fourth seed, which means you likely play Alabama in that first semifinal. But yeah, it would be tough envisioning Notre Dame dropping out because this is just such a physically and mentally tough team. And it's a mature team. I said before the season, since 1950, this might be the oldest team in Notre Dame history. And I mean, you have about 6, 7 fifth-year senior starters, even I think 9, including Skoranek and McLeod coming in as graduates. You even have a 6th-year senior starter with
Sean Crawford.
Sean Crawford, and there's just a maturity, a calm, a poise in this team that I think would preclude any kind of such blowouts.
Quickly before we get out of here, Lou, score predictions. I'm going Clemson 33, Notre Dame 27. Tight battle. Maybe it's a 26 27 Notre Dame lead. Clemson scores late. I think it's going to be a tight game. I'll take Clemson by 6. Lower scoring game as well. I think the defenses will come out a little bit better. Lou, what do you think in terms of score prediction? Do you have any numbers? What did you put on blueandgold.com today?
Yeah, I'm looking around here for the syrup bottle because I've been waffling over this all week and everything. And in the addition, I picked Clemson to win 31-28 because I said this back in September or October. Notre Dame and Clemson were going to meet twice, and they're going to split. And I think both of them are going to be in the playoff, regardless. There's going to be two ACC teams. So logically, I would have to go with Clemson. But man, it is so hard to pick against this Notre Dame team and just the resilience. So, my head says that Clemson will cover the 10.5
Hmm.
because I think they're going to be really loaded for bear. But my heart says that some way, somehow, this Notre Dame team finds it like a 31-27, 31-28 type of win. So, that if that's enough waffling for everybody, we might be able to maybe franchise IHOP into our own
All right, appreciate you
industry.
guys watching. Make sure to lock in not only to blueandgold.com, our website, but our YouTube page here at BGI and live show after the game. Join us 15 minutes after the final whistle, and myself and former Irish captain and linebacker Mike Goolsby will break down the action.